On today's episode of Recruiting Roundtable, we are discussing employer branding. In order to stay competitive and hire top talent, employer branding is vitally important to not only attracting but retaining top talent. And here to take today to talk about this are two people who know quite a bit about this, and I'm excited to have them both. We have Ben Chung, Director of Talent Acquisition at Dialogue, and Kim Wilkes, Head of Talent Attraction at Zapier. Ben, Kim, thank you so much for joining. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having us.
Alrighty. So let's start with some intros, just maybe a little bit, introduce yourself and your company and maybe a little bit about your background. Let's start with Ben.
Great. I'm Ben. I'm based in Montreal in Canada, and I fell into recruitment. I like to say this is my third career. Started as a grade 6 teacher at one point, worked in the nonprofit world for a while, and then made my move to corporate recruiting with IBM. I've been in recruiting probably, I want to say almost 14, 15 years now. Not to age myself, but one of the things that I really enjoy about recruiting is the storytelling aspect of it and working with people, working with, building relationships, building that connection and really kind of, understanding what makes people tick and then also understanding what everyone's story is.
Mm-hmm. And that's a huge reason why we even do this pod, right? Because there are so many stories. And I want to dig into a little bit more of your background because we interview so many talent acquisition leaders on this podcast. And I don't know, I can name on one hand the number that actually went to school for HR and then pursued this, right? A lot of people fall into this from other walks of life. But Kim, tell us about your background, please.
Yeah, it's funny you said that because I did actually go to school for HR and I was not in the plans when I was before getting into college. I had no idea what I wanted to do. And I just knew that I always loved helping people. And my mom actually said, you should go to school for HR because you love helping people. And so I did. And I'd always worked in customer facing roles. I'd worked in retail and I'd started doing some HR type work, doing some interviews and onboarding, things like that. And eventually had the opportunity to get into recruiting. It's something that I think I saw a few people getting into at the time. It wasn't like a very big or well-known type of job, but I applied and I didn't have direct recruiting experience, but my boss at the time brought me on and I joined an RPO and he taught me everything that I needed to know about recruiting. And I just found that I loved it. I love just connecting with people. Like Ben said, the storytelling, just getting to know people, what makes them tick, what makes them unique. I've just always found it to be so much fun. And then, fast forward from there, having the opportunity to lead teams. I worked in tech now for the past 8+ years, and also getting involved in employer brand. And I love the creative aspect of employer brand. So I really love that I get to wake up every day and do work that I really do enjoy. And I currently am at Zapier. I've been at Zapier for a little over 2 years. We are a no-code automation platform, so we help customers of all different sizes around the world in streamlining their workflows so that they can get work done faster and they can scale their businesses very seamlessly. So it's been a great opportunity so far.
Great. Thank you so much for that, Kim. And lastly, my name is Sean Huynh. I'm the host of this podcast. I'm also manager director at Rocket. I guess on the topic of sharing why we love recruiting, I think for me, it's especially being on the agency side, it's working with a lot of cool companies. We talk to new companies pretty much every week, and they're doing exciting things with technology, obviously with AI, and we're kind of at the forefront of that and helping these companies build their companies by hiring great people is a really satisfying sort of endeavor. So that's kind of why I'm in it. But let's, kind of move forward and talk a little bit about your roles at your current company and also, what kind of your responsibilities are. And then also let's kind of dig right into the topic, which is from an employer branding perspective, what are some of the things that either you have ownership of, or maybe there's other people in the company that have ownership over some of those pieces that you work with closely to ensure that your company and your brand is being represented and attracting the right types of people. Maybe I'll start with Kim on this one, because I know we had a pretty detailed conversation and you talked about the EVP, their employer value proposition. So I'd love to kind of dig on that a little bit.
Yeah, of course. So I think to answer your first question about my role and what I do at Zapier, I basically have two core functions, I guess I would say. Is one is the talent sourcing piece, and I have a really amazing team of sourcers that are going out and bringing in talent for us around the globe. I also lead our employer brand for Zapier, and so my team is also heavily involved in that too within the talent attraction piece. And so a lot of the work that we do is it's really all about bringing in talent, attracting talent, and telling our stories. And so I think that kind of leads into your second point there about like how did we go about that? How did we build our vision? How did we decide who we are and how we communicate that to candidates to attract the right people? And that all started with our EVP. Now, granted, I've only been at Zapier for 2.5 years. There's a lot of work that's gone into this before I joined, but since I did, it's been a lot of time of understanding like how do we want to communicate our culture, our values, our norms, what makes us really, really unique. And so I think we've taken some time to really nail that down and be very specific about what will you get at Zapier, what will you not get by joining Zapier. And I think that being really clear, being able to then share that internally with our recruiters, sharing it with hiring managers, making sure everyone's connected to that, and taking it a step further to then articulate it externally, such as on your jobs page, Glassdoor, LinkedIn, places where candidates can learn a lot more about you and they can decide, is this the right fit for me? Is this the culture that I want to be a part of or not? And it may not be. So a lot of work has really gone into that. And it's been a lot of fun and it continues to evolve.
And I want to touch a little bit more on the EVP piece in a bit, so we'll come back to that. Ben, tell us a little bit about Dialogue, and I know you're relatively new there, but tell us about kind of your role and the employer branding piece.
Yeah, so I am in month 3 of being here at Dialogue. I lead the talent acquisition function. We're a Canadian telemedicine company. So essentially, we offer an all-in-one experience on your phone where you can access primary care, mental health, and EAP services right on your phone. The company is fairly new in the sense that, we started 8 years ago. We've gone through lots of growth, went public at one point. We're now private again. The internal kind of discussion is around how do we keep innovating and avoid the big company vibes, even though we're becoming a larger company. And our mission or our big, hairy, audacious goal is really to enable world-class care in every pocket. So it's when it comes to employer branding, it's an interesting. I think we're at this point of time where I actually am working with the marketing team and the leadership team there to figure out where we want to go. How do we create maybe a more specialized employer branding function? Currently, I have someone on the team that partners with the marketing team to do some employer branding, recruitment marketing initiatives, but it's not necessarily a specialized or a kind of a dedicated role. Something that Kim said resonates with me of, kind of figuring out, right, why, what do we offer as an employer and what do we not offer? Being really clear on that. I think that's something that we have been clear, and it's probably an iterative process, right? I think we're reflecting on that now again to kind of see, why would someone join Dialogue and why would someone stay here, and maybe why it wouldn't be a good place for a certain individual.
And so I want to kind of touch on this because it's interesting, both your backgrounds prior to joining your current companies, which are, I think, Dialogue's like 800 employees and Zapier's around 1,000. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's accurate.
Okay. So both of you, prior to joining your respective current companies, worked at large like enterprises, right? And so I think both of you have interesting experience where, you were working at large enterprises, and I think that the employer branding piece is going to be different if you're working at like an Uber or an IBM versus, a 1,000-person kind of more of a mid-market company that's growing. So I'm curious of how you've seen kind of the differences in the approach to employer branding compared to where you are today and the size of the company you're in today versus some of the larger enterprises you worked at previously. Maybe I'll go back to Ben on this one. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I mean, at IBM, certainly most problems you could throw an army of people at it and you'd come to some solution, right? Uh, my experience there was we would have very dedicated specialists and really kind of subject matter experts. It was more of a center of excellence type of model where, the recruiting teams could go to the employer brand team and ask for collateral or work with them to develop some sort of specific campaign. Um, my environment now at Dialogue is there are literally three people that I Slack and we talk about what we want to do for the next quarter. And then we plan it and we do it and we find the resources for it. So it's in a way you could make the argument that I have less resources now, but I actually find things move a lot quicker. And I think having fewer people manage the brand in a way helps to ensure that it's the organization as a whole, and it's not, the culture carriers are not just the marketing people here, right? The culture carriers are everyone, and that's the expectation.
And so those three people, are they all in like a talent function, or do you have marketing people involved? And like,
yeah, so one of those people is in our talent management team. So she works on learning and development and then the employer branding piece. And then the other two are people in our marketing team. So we sort of beg, borrow, and steal their time whenever we need.
Working at bigger companies and kind of the employer branding functions and initiatives at bigger companies versus smaller. And Ben, you kind of give us a kind of great insights into IBM versus what it looks like at Dialogue. Kim, walk us through. What does it look like at some of your other companies? I know you were at like Uber, Palo Alto Networks, and now you're at Zapier.
Yeah, I would say with Ben, I agree. I think you have, not that you have all the resources in the world. I think that within marketing and employer brand, we always feel like we don't have enough resources. But I definitely felt like I had more people that I could lean on to get a lot of different pieces of work done, people who were 100% dedicated to that function. And coming to Zapier, we don't have quite as many resources. But I will say that it's been a really neat opportunity for me to work more closely with different recruiters, different sourcers, different members of our talent organization. So just because I don't have, a dedicated employer brand person working directly with me, we've kind of built that into our org. And so now I have specific people that are supporting certain areas of our work, whether it's Glassdoor or it's our LinkedIn pages. We have recruiters, again, and sourcers that are dedicated to those things. And I think it's great for them because it helps them learn. It gives them the opportunity to think creatively. And I also think it's a very personalized experience. Working in a smaller organization, you do have the chance to get to know each other better from across the organization, from the sales team, engineering team, marketing team, et cetera. You have a better sense of how people are feeling, what they feel in terms of their engagement levels, what they're not what's maybe not resonating with them so much about the company and their experiences. And so you can really get a better sense of that, and that can help you in building your EVP and telling your stories in a way that's really genuine and authentic. So while it has been a little bit more work at times, I think it's also been a lot more fun.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm more of a small company guy, so I completely hear you. I mean, I started my career in tech at Salesforce, and I have great like connections with Salesforce. I actually met a bunch of guys who are on my sales team and gal who was on my sales team 10 years ago on the weekend, and we all had a great time. But it's just the big company. It was just a different kind of environment, and I totally get what you're saying about being able to move faster and kind of get stuff done quicker being in a smaller org. So Kim, I want to stay with you. You mentioned culture and like defining the culture, and then you mentioned multiple times EVP, which I know is because you told me employer value proposition. So how do you go about defining? Because like, look, in the recruiting space, we get all the time clients that say, "Hey, we don't know if they're a culture fit." And that's really hard to like define what that means, right? So how do you go about defining what culture looks like in Zapier, and also what your employer value proposition or EVP is?
Yeah, it's such a great question. I would say the first thing that I did joining Zapier and what I would recommend for anyone is to first get a sense of how others are experiencing your company and the company's culture that does currently exist at that time. So, for example, I would look at candidate feedback. We send candidate surveys out at different stages of our recruiting process. And I would also look at feedback from our own teammates. So I would use surveys. I'm looking at Glassdoor, in her site, Comparably, et cetera. And I'm getting a sense of what are the trends, what are the themes that are showing up there, what's resonating with folks and what's really not. And that can help in making sure that whatever you decide to define as this is our culture, these are our norms, that it's genuine and it's authentic. You're not saying, oh, we're a company that really cares about XYZ, when the majority of candidates or employees are saying, we don't feel that way. So that would be step one for me. And then I think you can take a step back and start thinking about what makes us unique. What are the things we do? Like Zapier, we're fully remote, we're a global company. So how do we communicate? What tools do we use to stay in touch with each other? How do we give feedback effectively? All of those things can really help in defining your culture, as well as the benefits that you offer and the support that you offer to all of your employees. So I think once you're really, really clear on those, just pull others in, bring other stakeholders in, your executive team, your hiring managers, your diversity team, making sure that others feel like their voice is heard too, and that their work is being represented. Once you're really, really clear on that, then you can start putting it out there to the rest of the world.
Yeah, that makes sense. Ben, how do you define culture at Dialogue?
So we actually, jumping off on what Kim was saying earlier, one thing that we've done here is we've actually analyzed why do people join Dialogue and why do they stay, and also, right, why do they leave? So in terms of analyzing why they join us, we use our new hire surveys. We kind of do these pulse surveys throughout the course of the interview process. And then once they are hired, also, typically someone from the TA team will have a conversation with them once they've started and just kind of get a general sense of, did their expectations or did their reality match the expectations that we gave them, right? Did we kind of sell them on something that's totally not true, or so far are they finding that it's what they expected? We also, when dialoguers are here, we have these pulse surveys that go out. We use a tool called Office Vibe, and it really gives weekly kind of pulse on how people are feeling, specific reasons why they may be trending up or down in terms of satisfaction or alignments with the company's mission or values. And then when someone leaves, we do exit interviews. Our talent and culture business partners typically do those. Or, we do scan Glassdoor, Indeed for reviews, and just kind of keep a general pulse on where things stand. One of the advantages of being a smaller company is our CEO is he cares a lot and he's very involved. So he likes to see the Glassdoor reviews, right? Every month that we're polling them, and kind of looks through and just to see what are the sentiments. And yeah, I think that helps to keep us all accountable. One of the things that we've really, through that exercise, we've realized is there is really a positive influence that employer branding can play in both attracting people here, but then also retaining them here, right? Because the stories we tell ourselves, just like my therapist tells me, the story I tell myself in my head, it's similar. The stories that we tell ourselves as an organization, we live those stories. And so the kind of the slogan that we've adopted here is dialoguers join for the mission and they stay for the people. And I think that's very true.
So I've heard a lot about kind of surveying and trying to get a pulse of the people not only interviewing or on Glassdoor, people working there. But have you ever seen, and it's more of a question because, there's going to be some people that don't really respond to surveys, or they don't want to, or maybe they don't tell the full truth because they're worried about, some kind of repercussions. Have you ever seen employee satisfaction surveys or studies based on like productivity, like just based on, hey, like we're extremely productive and we're meeting our like revenue targets, or do you not think that that's like as important when it comes to kind of employee satisfaction? I'm just curious if you've had any kind of experience or thoughts on this. Maybe we'll start with Kim.
That's a really good question. To your question about like, is that important? I would say absolutely. When you think about your productivity, you think about your impact. At Zapier, we always talk about the impact that you're able to make within your role, within your level. And I think that all ties back to the company's mission. For us, it's making automation work for everyone. And so if you feel and if you are clearly able to articulate the impact that you've made and how you've supported the customers along the way, regardless of what your role is, I think that that's really key. So I don't know. I'm trying to think like when we look at our engagement surveys, our culture surveys that we look at, that is a part of it. We look at, do you feel that you have the right tools, the right resources? Do you feel that you're supported in the right way? Is your manager helping you in all the different ways for you to be able to make an impact? And so it's not just like, oh, are you feeling great about the culture? Or do you feel like you have great work-life balance? Which those are all very, very important things. I don't want to say they're not. But I think also, do you feel that you're able to successfully make an impact in your role? That absolutely contributes to the company's mission and their strategy.
Yeah, for sure. I think everyone feels better when the company's doing well and when they're doing well individually, right? Ben, what are your thoughts on this topic in terms of like productivity, company success, and how that makes people feel in terms of their individual contributions?
Yeah, and actually that goes back to one of the reasons why I really enjoy it here at Dialogue is I know I've drank the Kool-Aid now at this point, so I'm no longer unbiased. But we do have bi-weekly, we call it Dialogue 360. It's essentially an all-hands call, and our executive team goes through our 5 core objectives for the year, right? And one of those objectives is actually how far along are we on our revenue objectives? And it's interesting because I've never seen a group of people care so much about that metric, because it's easy, right? In a tech company, of course, a member experience, user experience metric everyone cares about because that's easy to get behind. The revenue target is almost the metric that people are looking at the most, because we know then we're selling our product to other companies and we're selling primarily to other HR leaders in the space. And so we're directly impacting the well-being and kind of the benefits that other employees have if they join up with Dialogue. So I think there's that aspect of tying our success to, are we all pulling in the same direction, right? Are we all kind of on board and doing what we can individually so that we contribute to that overall goal? I think that says a lot. I think it's hard to probably make that connection, right, with how well we're retaining talents, or maybe it isn't. I just haven't thought of it that way. But that's a really good question, Sean. I'm going to take that one back and noodle on that a bit more.
Okay. What about certain strategies, right? Like let's kind of pivot into things that maybe your team or you've tried to implement that have had a positive effect on kind of employer branding. Can you share maybe strategies or things that you've implemented, whether it's on social media or in events or on your website or on, LinkedIn, that you felt that had a positive impact from an employer branding perspective? Let's start with Kim.
Sure. There's a long list I have, but I won't share everything. I would say one thing that really resonates with me is our partnerships with diversity organizations. We partner with organizations like Alpha and Power to Fly, and it's just such a great way to not just attract talent, because they do have these sourcing platforms where we can look at talent that's available and looking for jobs today, and they can apply for our jobs, but also a way of telling our story and connecting with people where they are. So we have the opportunity to partner with them and host events. We just hosted an event with Power to Fly last week, and we took some questions and had the opportunity to share a little bit more about who we are. And so folks who didn't know quite a lot about us had the chance to learn a little bit more about our culture and our values and how we operate. But it's also a chance for us to create videos, create blogs, really getting our own teammates across the company involved too, so that they can share their voice, they can share their story in a really authentic, a really genuine way. And sometimes the stories they tell, they might be vulnerable, but I think what they're sharing is a great way for others to connect with that and to say, you know what, I experienced something like that, or I know what that feels like. You know what, that's the kind of person that I want to work alongside. And so these are all great ways of involving our teammates, but then also being able to put that out there in the world and hopefully connect with others on a deeper level. So that's just one that I would say. I could share a lot more, but I'd love to hear what Ben is working on too.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely can't take credit for any of this because I haven't been here long enough, but I do know that at Dialogue, we've been leaning into a lot of employee testimonials, or we call them spotlights, because we have quite varied employee populations. We have people that work in tech and product that, you know, are working their magic to make the app work for everyone. We have also the medical practitioners on our platform that are directly in touch with users and, you know, helping them through their health episodes, right? And so it's, I think where we're successful, or we have been successful, is tailoring our messaging, whether it's a blog post about what it means to, you know, lean into well-being in the summer, taking time away, right? Taking time for vacations, or it's more specifically geared towards, hey, here's our product about our, you know, our financial solutions that can help you be a bit more financially savvy and understand your own finances, right? So I think we've done a good job of tailoring those different types of messages to different audiences, because obviously what will resonate with someone working in a purely tech role is not going to be the same as someone working as a mental health specialist. I don't know that we've, you know, we have the silver bullet or anything, but I think we are pretty clear on who our audience is for each piece of content, and then we speak to that, and we're not trying to be everything to everyone. We are more focused.
So I want to stay on that topic, Ben, because that's a great segue into the next thing I want to talk about, which is attracting different segments of talent, right? Like I've been to some company websites where it's like their careers page, they're only talking to software engineers. Like you could tell that they want to attract software engineers because they'll talk about their software engineering culture and some of the people. And it's almost like they ignore like the rest of the people in the company. I don't know whether it's intentional. Actually, it is intentional because I noticed it, right? But how do you tailor your message to different segments, right? Whether it's to tech people or like medical people or, you know, otherwise. Ben, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I know one activity we've done internally is creating talent personas. So we actually have, you know, through in our organization, we use a lot of design thinking methodology, and we use a lot of workshopping, right? Cross-functional teams. So what we did was, for our three kind of core audiences, engineering, of course, sales, and then our mental health and EAP practitioners, we kind of broke it out into what would be that person's mission, right? What would be important to them and a driving force for them? What are essential skills for this type of person? And what are their motivations? And then where are the channels that we might reach them? So I'll give you an example. When we're looking at, you know, mental health and EAP, we know that their mission is they want to lend a listening ear. They offer support to our members in their well-being journey, right? The essential skills we're looking for: communication, active listening, empathy. Some of the motivations, it would be more of the mission versus, you know, maybe in sales, it might be more of compensation or you know, career mobility. And then when we look at channels, we often have this debate internally, right? I'm asked, oh, well, can we cut on the budget here on Indeed so that we can use it more on LinkedIn Recruiter? Well, LinkedIn Recruiter works well for, getting outreach to software engineers, but not so much for mental health folks. So
Yeah.
like knowing where people are and meeting them there, I think is important.
Such a great point. We actually at Rocket ran into that challenge earlier this year, right? It's a completely different pool of talent, and they're in a different. A lot of them aren't on LinkedIn, right? So you have to be creative in how you reach them. Kim, what are your thoughts on this topic? Where basically tailoring messaging and to tech versus non-tech or other areas of the business.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I would start with the job description or the job posting. At Zapier, we do our best to be as transparent as possible, and that's really where it starts. And so that way, if you're looking at a job, if you're looking at an open position for, say, an engineering position versus a marketing position, a legal position, et cetera, you have like really clear details of what that means right there in the job posting. So you can understand what is the work that I would get to do on the product. Now, granted, you may not work directly on the product. So I think starting with the job description and just being really specific, working with your hiring teams to make sure it's articulated in the right way. If someone's looking for, I don't know, say an AI engineering role, and they read the job posting and they think, well, this doesn't sound that exciting to me, they're not going to apply. So I just think working really closely with your hiring teams on how are you positioning yourselves right then and there on the job postings. And then I think beyond that, something that we've continued to work on evolving is our jobs page, our careers page, where we talk a lot about our culture. We also talk a lot about the type of people that will thrive at Zapier, working on automation and AI. So we do focus a lot on our product. We also focus a lot on the softer things too, and the support that you'll receive. So I think just thinking broadly to all of the different teams who we're really hiring for and making sure that that's showing up in those different places so that it resonates with anyone who comes to view a job or comes to look at your careers page.
I love that. I feel like a lot of companies, they don't put a lot of effort into their job descriptions. I don't know why. You'll see a lot of companies, they have like boilerplate paragraph at the top of the company, and then just very like generic bullet points. And it's almost like they took the job description from another company and just like copied and pasted it. And
They probably did.
Yeah. Anyways, I just wonder why you do that, right? Because I think that it's a great opportunity to make yourself stand out. And
right. And something that I love that we've done too is like, and some of our job descriptions will even share, here's what the team has been working on over the past year. So you have a better sense of what am I coming into? How do I fit into this? And then what is the impact that I can make knowing where they've been and where they want to go? Am I the right person for that? So I think the more that you can share your story, share the experience that you've already built with someone in that job posting, that's key.
Yeah.
And what's powerful about that is if you have that already kind of highlighted, right, from the branding perspective, then the recruiting teams, as they're hiring people and they're reaching out to people, they already have that at their fingertips. Like they don't have to make it up or put anything into Gen AI and come up with something. Like it's already there, and everyone knows the story, right? If you can kind of communicate internally those key wins, those successes. We have a Slack channel here where it's just the sales wins, right? And it's just every day you see which other logos we've got and what the story behind how we got to that new clients or how we got that renewal. And that's gold for recruiters because we have those candidates that ask a lot of tough questions. They want to know, they're interviewing us just as much as we're interviewing them. And we can share specific examples about, hey, here's how we work. And this is why, on our career site, you can see we've purposely tagged it as careers for leaders because we acknowledge that we're a small company, we're growing. Every hire matters, and every hire potentially has that kind of 10x factor where you could go from an individual contributor at a specialist level and maybe 5 years out you're heading up a new function or you've completely changed your career trajectory. Now you're working as a product manager, right?
Yeah, totally. Um, so we got 2 more minutes left, so we're gonna take it home. I want everyone to just think about, I'll give everyone each guest about 1 to 2 minutes to answer this. Let's take a look in the future. Before we look in the future, look back. 5 years ago, the world was very different. It was July 2019. I remember this time very clearly because the Raptors had just won the NBA championship. It feels like forever ago, and the world was completely different. It was pre-COVID. But moving ahead, what do you see as being some of the emerging trends as it relates to kind of workplace culture and the future of work over the next 5 years? Let's start with Kim.
Yeah, I would say a few different things. One, of course, I think everyone probably says is more use of automation and AI in our work. I just think being able to embrace that so that we can solve some of the challenges that we're all facing, especially when I think about the TA org, I think we're all trying to solve a lot of the same things, yet we often work on those in silos. And so I think breaking that down and helping each other find the right ways to incorporate automation and AI to support our work across the board. I'm hopeful that that's something that we'll see in the future. And I would also say, again, this is me hoping, is more remote and more hybrid opportunities. And I realize that not everyone can even be remote or be working from home, but I think in general, I would say more flexibility. That's something that I know a lot of companies are still challenged with. They're still trying to figure out, how do I do that? And I think just listening to your employees and understanding their needs and offering different layers of flexibility, that leads to better mental health. It leads to less stress. It leads to you being able to perform at your best. So I'm hopeful that those are some of the things that we'll continue to see or see more of in the future.
I totally feel about the flexibility piece. Excuse me. We've had we're seeing more and more companies going back to like more on-site, and I think I understand. I understand companies don't want to do it. I fully understand that for some companies that makes sense, but I do think that more flexibility is better for employees, generally speaking. Ben, why don't you take us home?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think AI will be in everything. I'm optimistic, and maybe I'm being too optimistic, but I want to say in 5 years, maybe resumes will be going away or starting to go away. If we can get to a point where, on the front end, where our employer branding is strong enough where you can make that decision and deselect yourself whether or not you think the role is for you, and individualized enough that we can have conversations without having this sort of arbitrary mishmash of your experiences on a piece of paper. Like I do think that we're going towards that. I probably sound crazy, and someone will probably watch this in 5 years and say, "What was he saying? Like we're still using resumes." But I really hope that that's the future that we get to, so that we can have more of those realistic conversations. I saw the other day, BCG I think does a good job of their employer branding. They have a day in the life where you can sign up and kind of really see what the day is at that company in that specific role. And with technology now, I mean, you can do all these sorts of virtual type of experiences, right? So hopefully we'll get there. It'll be more those types of virtual experiences so that candidates can have a better experience. They can see what that job will look like, and we'll do less dumb things in the interview process.
But I was laughing because I love what you said. I have to say +1 to the no resumes, because at Zapier, we don't require resumes or cover letters. So it can be done. And I continue to push this. And I really hope that more organizations will follow along in this path, because it makes it more inclusive. You don't have to just look at someone based on what's on their resume. You give them the opportunity to share, what have I done and what can I do for you in your organization. So my fingers are crossed that changes across the board too.
That's amazing. Well, applause to Zapier for that. I love that. And thank you, Ben and Kim, for joining today. I think this was a very interesting conversation. And, hopefully we can have you guys come back again sometime and we can talk some more recruiting. But until next time, thank you for everyone for tuning in, and have a great day. See you guys later.